The Nike Air Zoom Prestige is billed as the more affordable, younger cousin to the Nike Vapor X. But with all the features packed into the Prestige and at a lower price point than the Vapor X, it really is worth asking the question, is the Nike Air Zoom Prestige just as good as the Nike Air Zoom Vapor X? Well, let's find out. Hey everybody, it's Zach, Tennis Pro Doc, helping you improve your game with science. Remember, every week we are play testing and tearing down new tennis shoes and tennis gear from the perspective of a current foot doctor and former tennis pro. So if you want to stay in the loop with the latest tennis tech, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell, that way you don't miss a thing. Of course, today I've got the Nike Air Zoom Prestige going through the play test, serve test, and suicide test to see if at the lower price, is this still a better buy than the Nike Air Zoom Vapor X? Now the uppers of the Prestige are pretty similar to the Vapor X. The one big glaring difference you can probably see now is it doesn't have that padded ankle collar that goes around the arch to the lateral side. However, when playtesting the Vapor X, I didn't notice that collar gave me really any support one way or the other, so I didn't miss it in the Prestige at all. Now the Prestige also has the integrated shoelace eyelets that give you a really nice secure fit. They really integrate with the uppers well, just like the Vapor X, and I found that they gave me a really secure tie down, just as in the Vapor X. Now the midsole differences are pretty interesting between the Prestige and the Vapor X. The Prestige has a much more traditional shank versus that broad, wide shank on the Vapor X that actually integrates with the outsole tread. This one's more regular shape, integrates with the midsole, and actually I found it was a little more stable than the Vapor X. Even though it wasn't as broad, it actually felt like it was holding my foot up a little better, even though both the Vapor X and the Prestige do have very flat arches. And what's really interesting is the Prestige is lighter. It's 13.1 ounces versus the Vapor X at 13.6 ounces. Now the outsole on the Prestige is a much more traditional hybrid herringbone versus the Vapor X. On the medial side, you have a very dense herringbone. On the lateral side, a little more chunky pattern. And then on the inside of the shoe, right down the center, you have a nice air channel for sliding on a hard court. Now these shoes are pretty much a hard court shoe. I really wouldn't try to make a living with them on clay. Now that's in stark contrast to the Vapor X. The Vapor X has a really aggressive aggro crag type tread, comes up medially and laterally. So if you're off balance and only part of your shoe is contacting the court, let's say you go into a big slide or you're just trying to run down a ball, they're gonna grip pretty much anything. I wouldn't be surprised if they grip ice. Whereas on this shoe, on the Prestige, you really only have tread coming up on the toe box to protect it. Otherwise, it's just a traditional stamp on the forefoot and the heel. So if you're a very aggressive mover or if you're a big slider, these shoes are probably gonna wear down a little bit more for you than say the Vapor X, and they're definitely not going to grip like the Vapor X does. So if you're used to that on the Vapor X, it's gonna be a little bit of a departure on the Prestige. One of the most interesting suicide tests I've done to date. Prestige coming in at 14.74 seconds versus Vapor X at 14.66 seconds. Now you can see I'm actually sliding a little bit on the hard court with the treads. The Prestige just doesn't have as good of a grip as the Vapor X does on the court. However, the Prestige is lighter, so the times end up similar. Fit of the Air Zoom Prestige is definitely different than the Vapor X, being much more narrow in the forefoot. Now I broke the forefoot of the Prestiges in about 30 minutes. That's with my 2E width foot. I will say though, even after playing with them for a little while, they still do feel snug in the forefoot. Now I never had pain or cramping with the Prestige because the materials are really light and it expands in the forefoot. However, if you have a pretty wide foot and you don't like that snug feeling, definitely go with the Vapor X over the Prestige. However, if you have a more narrow to medium foot, the Prestige is actually going to fit you a lot better than the Vapor X does. Now, besides the more narrow fit in the forefoot, the rest of the shoe breaks in immediately, zero break-in time. One thing you've got to consider about the Prestige is if you wear orthotics, they're going to have a hard time fitting a really thick orthotic as the ankle collar is just pretty low. So if you wear orthotics, make sure you've got a thin orthotic in these, or if you've got a thicker orthotic or a little more bulky, go with another shoe. Now, whereas the Vapor X or Vapor 10 felt more stable when I was off balance, when I actually had time to set up and plant my foot for a shot, the Air Zoom Prestige actually felt much more solid under my foot for those shots. And the Air Zoom Prestige just actually has a much more traditional solid feel underfoot, whereas the Vapor 10 has that real flexible feel, which some people like, but some people, especially people with flat feet, really don't. Now, even though the Vapor 10 felt like it was flexing more than the Prestige did, the Prestige actually did better on the serve test, getting 23 centimeters versus the Vapor 10 or Vapor X's 21.5. And that just goes to show you, just because a shoe feels like it's flexing more, it doesn't mean it actually has a better springboard effect versus a shoe that has a more rigid beam in it. But I think the biggest difference between these two shoes is the price. New pair of Nike Vapor 10s is gonna cost you $150, whereas you can find the Nike Air Zoom Prestige right now for between $75 and $100. Now the Vapor X or Vapor 10 is by no means a durability focused shoe. So even though the Prestige doesn't have as aggressive of an outsole and is made from lighter materials, it's not like that's a huge knock on it in the durability category because the Vapor 10s are notorious for wearing down quick. So mostly it comes down to the outsole and the fit. If you're a very aggressive mover, then the Vapor X is your shoe. Also, if you have a wider foot, then yeah, the Vapor X is probably your shoe. But if you have a more narrow to medium foot and you don't necessarily care how the shoe performs when off balance or sliding, and you play mostly on hard courts, then the Air Zoom Prestige is a really good alternative to the Nike Vapor 10s. But I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments down below. Would you be more inclined to go with the less expensive Prestige or spend a little more money and get the more aggressive treads of the Vapor 10s? But I think this is just such an interesting question. Do some of these more budget-friendly shoes stack up just as well against their more expensive counterparts? I've got a bunch more of these more budget-friendly shoes in my garage waiting to be tested, and I'm really excited to see if they stack up just as well as the Prestige does against the Vapor 10. So I hope you join me for those videos. Otherwise, I hope you all have a great day, great night, wherever you are tuning in from, and I'll see you next time.